All right, we're up. Let's get
Cool.
it.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Let's jump into it. I guess let's bounce it off. We'll start with you. We're talking football, right? And we're
Yeah.
talking training effects and detraining effects. So let's start with that training effects.
Right. Okay. So I did nerd football. Found an article by, his name is Jay Hoffman. Yeah, Jay Hoffman.
Oh, dude, he wrote our book.
Yeah. So him. So he did one called Physiological Demands of American Football, and there's so many references on him when you like type in PubMed and Google Scholar, like he has like all these things on like football specifically. So based on everything that I took out, I read a whole paper and I took out the basic or the main key points I think of, and then underneath I listed some bullet points of like adaptations between endurance and resistance. Not everything that I can think of off the top of my head, but just like the main things that top of mind. But some of the key things that he said within the paper. First one was, although research examining the physiological response of players during a football game is limited, for example, there are no studies known that have examined metabolic or cardiovascular changes in a game. So not in the game, but during like actual training and whatnot, there were a couple. The expectation of players to provide 100% of their effort on each play, regardless of their position and short duration of each play, suggests that the primary energy provision during specific play relies primarily on the phosphagen and anaerobic glycolytic systems. The intensity and duration needed on specific plays undoubtedly also puts demands on the aerobic system, as does repeated plays with short rest intervals, but this has not been documented in American football. So he's pretty much doing an educated guess, like even though there's not testing, because it'd be hard to test in-game cardiovascular responses because you got to wear the mask, you got to wear like all the metabolic stuff, which if you have 5 6'2", 300-pound guys beside each other and they're playing, like you're not going to put a mask on without something breaking. So it just an educated guess based on findings from other studies. Like even though that football is going to be primarily predominant in ATP, PCR, and your anaerobic glycolytic, there is still going to be some work done within the aerobic system that is just because plays are they're kind of back to back to back. He said that despite elevations in markers of muscle damage, the lack of change in both testosterone and cortisol suggests that highly conditioned athletes were able to withstand the stress of 10 days of 2-a-day practice sessions. So it gets into the thing that Dr. Cutler was talking about in his video this week, where when he showed us the example of how he used to program stuff when he was still coaching baseball, that early in the season, even though baseball is predominantly a power sport and a glycolytic ATP PCR, that you still have to have that aerobic base that is going to help long term with aspects of like recovery. He also said that physiological adaptations resulting from football practices and games also appeared to enhance muscle oxygen kinetics and recovery. Results showed a significant reduction in the extent of muscle deoxygenation and a significantly faster time for reoxygenation. So what I took from this is he's saying that because of the endurance training aspect we did, athletes were able to increase their ability to regain oxygen quicker, which thus is going to help them recover better, which is what football getting endurance, and then you get to your strength training, the more power specific as the season goes on. This adaptation appeared to occur without any significant changes noted in peak power, mean power, and rate of fatigue, and total work performed during the monthly assessments. A recent study in NCAA Division III football players indicated that strength and power gains are achieved not within a season. Not saying that's not within a season, but the basis of everything is going to be achieved throughout their entire playing career. So it's not going to be an instant bang, you're better. You start off in junior league, and then you get, middle school, and then high school, and then if you go to college or pros, you're just gradually going to be getting stronger, which is that progression overloading based on the coaches that you have. Evidence does suggest that players become, I found this interesting, desensitized to the constant contact that they receive from football plays, and that the anabolic and catabolic hormonal responses do appear to remain consistent during a competitive season. So I didn't put this in my notes, but he did say, for example, if you think about linemen compared to skilled players, linemen are going to be, he said they're going to be at more increased risk, not risk, but more susceptible to getting head injuries, even though they might not be significant. And that's because since they're within like a centimeter of each other when they're blocking defensive linemen, you're not getting that full force. As much force as you would be is after your skill player and your receiver running, say, a post route, and you catch a ball and you don't see the safety and you get hit. Even though skilled players aren't as likely to suffer head injuries, when they do, their amount of head injuries and significance is going to be higher because there's more force and velocity coming from the defensive player. And then some of the keynotes that I took that I told you I typed down for American football: endurance effects, you're going to have a decreased resting heart rate, increased VO2, decreased submax heart rate, increased ventricular volume, even though it might not be saved out of a cross-country runner, even though they're still doing aerobic stuff, it's not as much as what they would do. So it's going to increase a little bit, but maybe not as much as somebody who is strictly endurance. More stamina, as a football coach would say, increased aerobic capacity. And I put a little subnote under here that says the strategy of some teams may be to line up quickly and snap the ball with minimal rest to exhaust the opponent or prevent the opponent from substituting rested players. So you're going to have some type of aerobic capacity to be able to continually do this on like no-huddle plays. This would also cause American football athletes to recover better because if proper recovery protocols are followed, they have that aerobic base to kind of get nutrients and the recovery stuff within their body a little bit quicker than if they didn't have that. For resistance, increased ventricular wall thickness, increased anaerobic capacity because the duration of each play can vary 1.9 to 12.9 seconds, increased muscle mass, increased force output, increased strength, absolute and or relative. There's one of the studies he did, so Hoffman said a significant increase in 1RM squat strength was seen during the competitive football season, and increased testosterone and growth hormone.
Whew.
It's a lot,
Yeah.
but
no, those are some. Let's break that down. There's some great tidbits in there. I think let's go back to the first point you said with the aerobic system. I think it goes to what you need for training. It's not just looking at, okay, what is the sport what are the main requirements? Because underlying everything, you're going to need that aerobic base to help not only with recovery, with substrate utilization, with these repeated efforts that you see in football. Just like you said, if you're going no hurry offense, you got to be on the field for extended periods of time. And we'd be lying to say that you're not going to recover after each bout. It's a repeated effort. So that the accumulation of repeated efforts over that period of time, you're going to need to rely on some aerobic capacity. So having that good underlying base and then kind of almost supplementing with that and then having your ATP, PCR, and your glycolytic the main components in the underlying aerobic is absolutely necessary. I'm curious. So you said the desensitized they get desensitized over the course of the season to contact. Is that what it said?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that's interesting. So is there did they measure that, or was it just that?
That was one of the, at the end of the study, was one of the practical implications on there. So there wasn't any reference to a study that did this, but I think they're saying based on how often a player is going to be getting hit and be doing hitting, that they're becoming desensitized to the contact after some amount of time.
Okay.
And I think that's based on the hormonal responses of when you get hit, because when you get hit, you're going to have muscle damage, so that cortisol is going to spike a little bit. So I think the hormonal responses, they're taking an educated guess saying based on certain hormonal responses, you're going to get desensitized at some point in the season if you want to continue playing the season, without having anything significant happen over a prolonged period of time.
Right. And I feel like that kind of goes into somewhat of an overload principle, like in an adaptation that you see, because normally, say you have just started out playing football, when you're bracing for contact a lot of the time, especially just starting out. But then as you progress in your career, say you start as a peewee, and then as you play football more and more, you no longer are at that period where your body is completely tense. You're probably, you play the game, and then you see it's part of the sequence, and you're no longer having that same outburst of whatever tensing up or hormone stimulation like you normally would. That
kind of reminds me of Tom Brady, the stuff he does. I'm not sure how much science behind it, but he said that in one of the YouTube thing they had on him a couple years ago, said that for his TB12 stuff, a lot of stuff he does is elasticity training. That when he gets hit, it kind of recoils more, and he kind of is able to absorb more impact without taking as much damage as what he did younger, which he says is a credit to him of playing as long as he has, because he has learned and train his body to absorb impact better than what somebody else his age would that is.
Right. Yeah, because Tom doesn't really train with weights. Have you ever seen some of his programs? He
Yeah,
does. It's a lot of like core work. Like planks. He's doing a ton of band exercise resistance and like inertia based exercises. I've never seen him train with weights. Maybe I bet he does a little bit, but it's not like he doesn't bench press.
yeah, it's not anything that's gonna be significant that
Yeah.
And he might not even train with the strength and conditioning staff or professional team because he has his own trainer. Like, he has his own trainer hired, so he might be training with that guy where everybody else on the team is doing, the strength and conditioning stuff. But it also might be different for specific positions as well.
True. Yeah. Yeah, that takes us a whole down different rabbit hole. We got kind of an hour conversation about Tom Brady's training because it's like it's so specific to him, and that goes to kind of the specificity. It's like when he sells his program, TB12 method, and then somebody like a quarterback at another quarterback tries to replicate his program. It may not work for that quarterback because it's just he's not Tom Brady. He doesn't have the same muscle fiber makeups. He doesn't have the same genetics, and it's just all different. So it's very interesting when people sell these programs that they do, and it's like, okay, this is how I got good, and then people try to replicate it, and they don't see the same results just naturally, right?
Right.
That's really. What was another good tidbit that you said too? The effects of like concussions or from skill player versus offensive lineman, because the impact is going to be far greater. So it may not happen as often, but it reminds me too. What was that hit on Antonio Brown, Vontaze Burfict during the playoffs
years back, 3 or 4 years ago,
right? And then rocked.
Yeah, it was bad.
And it's like that brings me to it too. It's like, I mean, I feel like Antonio Brown's gone downhill since then. Though, like that hit, it could have been like the straw off the camel's back.
The beginning of the end.
Yeah, for sure. But no, you're absolutely right. Like these offensive linemen and defensive linemen, they take a brute hits every play, just about, right? And so, but it's just so minimal impact. Then a skill player is way more susceptible to that. At the same time, they're not on guard as much, right? Because they know going into a play, they're going to receive the ball. They're not looking at oncoming traffic. They may try to see who's around, but they may not be able to be able to respond to that in time before they catch the ball, because that's their primary goal, is to receive the ball. So they get hit and they're potentially not bracing, or they're not in the right body position. And then there's some problems that happen with that.
Right. And even if you take concussions out of the picture, you don't see most offensive linemen get like career-ending injuries. You'll see it more running backs and receivers, because like, if you get hit hard enough, you're going to break something's going to tear. Whereas offensive linemen, you're not, running full speed for 15, 20 yards and making a plant and cut and your ACL tears.
Right. That's I feel like with offensive linemen, they're like the most injuries you see is like they step back and then they get stepped on, and like they'll have an ankle, like an ankle injury, something with the foot. Like you rarely see like anything above the waist with them. Maybe potentially if they're extending out, it could be a tricep or a shoulder or something, but very rare, very rare. All right, let's go into the detraining effects. What I noticed, I had like a whole mess of topics. I went through the book and I was just kind of looking at specifics. I didn't get a specific topic, but what I wanted to note first was the difference between really well-trained athletes and sedentary or just starting out athletes, because they noted in the text within a few short pages how much the difference is between being extremely well-trained and then only having a little bit of time of training, because the detraining effects are going to be far more significant for the people that are more well-trained. It goes to that aspect of the more you have, the more you can lose type of thing. So that's like a big thing that I noticed. And then now that we're looking at football as it's a type 2, dominant sport, not to say, there's type 1 in there, but type 2 dominant fiber sport. So these guys will be more susceptible to losing a type 2 fibers, probably type 2B, and then, type 2A, and then obviously probably a little bit of type 1 as well. From the text too, you see endurance wise, you're going to lose aerobic capacity after about 2 weeks. It might go down probably, but it's not going to go down significantly. It may go down to possibly about 10 to 15%. One thing to note though too is the strength and power could be maintained up to 4 weeks. So strength and power, which is noticeable too. I mean, detraining, it's very tough to lose strength and power. Like, and you can, I think too, the more you have, the more strength and power capabilities you have. It only takes a small amount to maintain that ability. So you might not have to put in as much to maintain. So that kind of goes to like a tapering period, if you will. What else did I come on as well with the talking about super compensation, where you kind of have that period where you have short periods of detraining, and then you kind of, when you go down, but then you have these spikes, you kind of get that super compensation period as well. So it almost be like you may have a period of time where you lose some strength and power, but then you take a little bit off, and then you come back right to the next week, and it goes into that period. What else did I look at? I'm gonna look at my notes here. I brought a lot of things on. I looked a little bit about bone density as well, and how like as you stop training, bone density is going to be a problem as well. It made note of people that stop training, like kind of right away over a period of time, are going to lose more bone density than the people that are training, which is natural. So it has to do with aging, it has to do with inactivity and stuff like that. What else did I want to talk about? Some things about tapering. Oh yeah, here we go. So a couple of things I took from actually a Simply Faster article was that in over a few week period, you'll have about a 60% decrease in oxidative enzymes. So that could be significant. So you want to keep your aerobic capacity up the best you can, because those oxidative enzymes are really important to help with substrate utilization and recovery from fatigue and whatnot. And then a decrease in metabolic efficiency I saw as well, but it's still higher than age-matched controls again. So people that are more highly trained are still going to have, even if they take a month period off, they're still going to have, compared to their age-matched controls, probably 20-30% higher strength or power than them. And the last thing I saw was then this probably has to do with the oxidative system as well. You're going to, over a period of time of detraining, especially aerobically, you're going to focus on less fat utilization and transfer more over to a carb metabolism instead, which seems to make sense as well. Right. But so that's about what things I had on that. I kind of wanted to go into a conversation a little bit about stuff in the text where about like talking about genetic ceiling and talking about overload, because I think the genetic ceiling has a really big influence on where athletes try to take their careers, especially in terms of PED use and like in getting up higher than that. So I'll pump the brakes a little bit then, and maybe we can go a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always been interested in kind of like not just genetic ceiling, but certain people are going to be more prone to certain types, we talked about this last time, certain types of training stimulus based on their DNA, what their gene expression show. So I remember when I did an undergrad paper on the gene of PGC1 alpha, and that is pretty much the aerobic endurance gene. And it showed studies where, and this is just off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember most of it, but I mean, there were studies I found that said, people who had that gene were people who excelled at like cross country or like the long distance and track and field. Like when people get tested, they can test on blood samples, like the genetics that you have and what you're more predisposed to, and that even some resistance training athletes who had more PGC1 alpha than those who didn't weren't as, I guess you can say, strong kind of relatively to what their body size was, because their body essentially genetically wasn't built for resistance training. Not that it wouldn't be beneficial, but there'd be more benefit, and there'd be more performance, be able to like have high performance levels if you did some type of endurance event. And I was watching some Eddie Hall was talking about, this is probably 4 weeks ago, I was just talking about his life going on. He did some DNA test, and I think it said he had what's called the Hercules gene. And the Hercules gene basically says that like you are within like a 5% population of the world to be freakishly strong, which obviously shows because he's Eddie freaking Hall. But I've always been interested in like trying to figure out what maybe somebody's gene expression would be. I don't know how ethical it would be or legal it would be to do with college athletes, to like before a season come in and say, hey, look, get a blood sample, we'll send it into some lab and see what you're more prone to be better at, and then based on that we can change your position in football, we can change your position in soccer, we can say, hey, let's let's focus more for you doing type of aerobic training and not as much resistance training, or vice versa, or even like young kids. Like if kids first get into sports, take blood sample from one of your kids and be like, oh, my kid has a high concentration of PGC1 alpha. I'm going to make them run cross country and see, have the next Olympian, in my family, so I can get maybe from
Right.
it or something like that.
I think it's like how much, because that is so fascinating to think about, because could you imagine a time, maybe we'll get to a point in time, but the level of like intimacy that involves, and it just seems there's a lot of lawsuits waiting to happen. But
Yeah.
it's funny because how much of that, it's like we could influence that so much if we were able to get those results, but then how much of it too is like how much are we trying to influence our athletes to do something that they might not even want to do. We're like, hey, so and so, you got this type of gene, so I want you to do, as a wide receiver, I want you as a small forward. But it's like, well, coach, I've been playing point, I've been playing, fullback my entire life or whatever like that. I like that position, you know what I mean? But it's like, well, yeah, I know, but these, the science
Yeah.
doesn't lie type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much of that, like, we would have to rely on that science to really influence that. That's a really good point you bring up. And I think with the genetic ceiling, I think the problem we see too, like the people like Eddie Hall and the people like Thor, these guys and gals too, like Steffi Cohen too, she's a
Mm.
freak. But they have these particular genes that I feel like a lot of regular, so average Joes try to copycat in a way. So like these people have these training programs that are like super in depth, they're super involved, and then people try to copy them even though they don't have the same genetic expression that athlete would, right? So it's just like talking about that Tom Brady program. What may work for them may not work for you. So to expect the same results and to expect to be the same caliber athlete as somebody who has a completely different specificity training and genetic makeup is kind of it's a little naive to think about it, to be like that as an athlete. Not to say you can't get better and like change your potentially, morph your fiber type, but it's a little bit out there to try to take a program, almost like a cookie cutter program, and then, try to apply it to yourself.
Right.
And I think that's where the fitness space has really gone off the rails in the last few years. You just kind of see these people that will slap together a program and go, hey, this is what I do, so here, I'm going to sell it to you, and it's going to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Working in a commercial gym, you see that all the time. It's ridiculous, right? Hey man, like you should do this because I see you're trying to get your bench heavier, so do this because I did it before, it worked for me, and look what I can do. I can bench X amount of weight. It's like, okay, like just because you did that work for you doesn't mean it's gonna make me bench more. Maybe I have to hit a different accessory muscle than what you were hitting. Maybe the reason that your bench wasn't good is because your triceps weren't strong enough, whereas the reason my bench is not good, maybe I can't stabilize my lats, so I gotta work my lats a little bit more, but my triceps are fine. You know what I mean? Right. So it's kind of like you got to have people who know what they're talking about, which is where having the certifications is like a key thing to have. Like, even though this person may be trying to help you, look at their credentials. Like, if they don't have it, then take what they say with a grain of salt. But you want to make sure you have somebody who knows the scientific stuff behind it, the methods behind how to do stuff the right way. But yeah, that's a whole other topic that I could talk about for hours and hours on end.
Yeah, and it's about just being able to be adaptable and to be able to understand that not everybody is so different that it's not going to apply to the same people. There are fundamental principles like we're talking about in this text right here, the principles of training, getting your overload and everything like that, and in specificity. But again, it's a very individualized, and it has to be that way because different levels of, you could have different bone density, you could have different lever arms that aren't going to allow you to aren't going to allow you to a bench full as much weight as the guy next to you who's got the shortest levers in the world, or squat to full depth, which is going to lead me to my next point. Let's go into this squat video from a while back. I'm going to share my screen with you. Let's see it here. See this work. So we got LeBron.
I do remember talking about this. Because Randy.
Yeah. So we alluded to this in our biomechanics course, and we can actually bring a little bit of biomechanics in here. Let's see here. All right, gotcha. Screen mirror.
Yep.
All right, got it. Okay. Boom. Got it. You seeing that? Okay. So let's look at the squat. Let's look at the squat here. So clearly he's working out with his trainer. This is a while back, right? He took a ton of heat for this, and I'm sure his trainer did too. First of all, a couple things to point out. LeBron James, elite athlete, basketball player. Is he a weightlifter? No. Do we want him swatting ass to grass because he's a weightlifter and he's going to go compete in a powerlifting competition? No. So in the sport of basketball, how often is he going to have his butt all the way down to the floor? I don't know. Probably never. Maybe if he finds himself in a weird predicament, but hardly ever, right? So my problem with this, and I'm going to be honest with you, I saw this squat the first thing, and I was a little naive. This was actually like a year or so ago, and I've developed way more since then. I saw this, and I was the same boat. I was like, what is this? Why isn't he going all the way down to the floor? First of all, LeBron James, his levers are so long. You see his femurs are ridiculously long. So, and this is putting him at probably the best mechanical advantage for being able to rebound his position, to be able to play defense, and so to be able to overload this specific style of squat. So for me, I have no problem with this. And really at the same time too, where you have all these keyboard warriors, you cannot take one exercise or one graphic of exercise and then completely tear apart somebody's program. I need to see the rest of the program. I have no idea what else is going on. What do you think about that?
So I still do think I've always been one to be like, in order to get stronger and develop a great amount of force development, that you're going to have to go through a full range of motion. However, there is a time and place to do quarter squats or half squats. In this case, he might be in the middle of the season and there's no reason for him to do that because his rate of force development might be already, I won't say maximized, but he might already have like a great development of his rate of force development based on maybe 3 weeks prior or 3 months prior to this video. So good 3 months of this video happened. So he might be in part of the season where he's like, I got to train rate of force development through this specific range of motion because I am in season. In season, I'm not going to be going all the way down, so there's no reason for me to be able to do that in an in-season type of environment, type of training, and that comes into specificity of your program. Like there are times when I'll schedule, quarter squats or like counter movement jumps. So up real quick. Mm-hmm. You're not doing a squat jump. You're doing something similar to a squat jump, but like I'm gonna have you do counter movement jump because we built that rate of force development the first 6 weeks of our program by going full range of motion, by getting stronger through full range of motion. Now we can apply that through a shorter range of motion while you are in season. We can apply that to help you develop more force through this range of motion that you'll be experiencing for the next 4 months of your season that you're going to be playing in. After season's done, then we'll go back to doing full squats. But there's different specificity of certain things. Exactly. So, and then, like I said, nobody probably has to train like, why are you doing this? People just automatically went to it. Oh no, it's not a full depth squat, it's not a real squat. But yeah, but this might be a specific thing he's doing to train some type of aspect of his game.
Right. And that's such a good point you bring up too, because I wholeheartedly agree. Where are they at in the training program? Are you trying to train a specific, did his trainer say to LeBron, today in your program, the next 4 weeks, we're doing quarter squats. We're going to overload these quarter squats for a specific purpose. I guarantee that's what he's doing. LeBron probably has one of the, a great trainer, most likely. Yet we take a small snapshot of this and we immediately tear it down without any look at, okay, when is this happening? Is this during the season? Now, okay, if this was in the off season and we're working on some hypertrophy and we're working on, building solid range of motion and foundational skills, that might be a problem, right? Because like you said, you want to get a full range of motion, actually learn the movement. And then as you get towards the season, build more specific. Absolutely. It bothers me sometimes when people, I don't know why about it. It's just like people are quick to tear down everybody. Maybe because they think they're the best coach in the world, that they could train LeBron better than his trainer. But it's about, look at the lens. What is the adaptation? What are they trying to do? Where are they at in their programming? And then you can make a little bit more of a perspective on it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. What else do we have to talk about? I want to see. That's close to bringing just about what I wanted to talk about. Last thing I did want to bring up, this is actually just a small note because I came across it before we had put this Dr. K had put this discussion up. Have you seen, do you know have you heard of Milo of Croton? Milo of Croton? It's about like the overload principle.
Yes, yes. Is that the one with the bull or the cow on the back?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was just fascinated by it. I just wanted to kind of throw it out there because he was basically, it's just I saw the graphic. It's him. He lifts a baby calf like up a mountain every single day. And then as, day after day, it grows baby calf and eventually gets into a full grown bull, which just goes to the testament about you have to overload to get that specific adaptation. To get better and progress, you have to overload. And so the baby calf grows, your weights grow up, 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 and then you hit probably a taper period, and then you to go down a little bit, taper, and then you back up and hit it again, All right.
That's always been a great graphic.
Yeah, I like it. I just thought I'd bring it in there. Anyways, with that, great talk again. I'll stop it there. Send me over your notes and I'll throw together a little prompt, all right?
Sounds good.
All right, bro. Take care.
See ya.
See ya.